Okay, so I will continue the lecture from what Miss Yasmin has taught you. So we'll start at, or actually resume at Unit 1H. In this sub, I would say sub-unit lah. Okay, we will discuss on GMP, Chapter 7, 8, and also 9. Whereby in Chapter 7, it will be on the outsource activity. Chapter 8, it will continue with the complaints and product recall. And the last chapter will be covered in this subunit will be on the topic of self-inspection. Okay, Chapter 7, outsource activity. So have you ever heard of the word or outsource before? Pernah dengar perkataan outsource ni? Or is it like the first time, or maybe you have heard before but you do not, maybe you do not understand what does it mean? Faham tak dengan perkataan outsource ni?
No, sir.
No, alright, okay. So the term outsource can be used in, I would say, in various field, but when we talk about manufacturing or specifically in pharmaceutical manufacturing, the term outsource mean when one company they form or sort of like sign a contract with another company to produce the product for them. That means they own the whole, I mean the identity or the products brand, but then again they will sort of like ask another company to help produce it for them or manufacture it for them. This happen if in the Malaysian pharmaceutical landscape. We have companies like Pfizer's or Piramal. Pfizer's is from US or Piramal from India, for example. Instead of they opening up a new manufacturing plant in Malaysia to produce their product, they instead of spending quite a large sum of money, okay, because they have to hire staff and everything, they form a contract with a local company, a local pharmaceutical company, like for example Pharmaniaga, whereby this local company will manufacture the drugs or the product for them, but under certain condition, which we will discuss in a bit. So when they did something like this, like outsourcing, they cut costs on the headcount, meaning staff. They do not need to pay the salary. They do not need to buy machine. They do not need to have a plant over here. They just have to find a credible manufacturing company, another manufacturing company to help produce this product for them. Okay, but then again, the what do you call that? The intellectual property, everything is still owned by them. The marketing is still done by them. It's just that the manufacturing will be outsourced to a different company. So in this chapter 7, and we have the pointer. We will look into the principle, the general requirement for the contract giver, okay, and then you have the contract acceptor and the contract itself. So these are the key requirement for an outsource activity to happen. So basically, what happened in an outsource activity is that any activity that is covered by the GMP guide, okay, that is outsourced, should be appropriately defined, agreed, and controlled in order to avoid misunderstanding. That means everything has to be spelled out. What are the requirements? What are specification? You cannot leave any information from being put down in the contract, for example, okay, because this will result in unsatisfactory product or operation quality, or it can also give out to or miscommunication. Maybe the contract giver thought otherwise, while the contract acceptor thinks, oh, the product should be like this. Okay, so there must be a written contract between the contract giver and also the contract acceptor, which clearly establishes the roles and the responsibilities of each party. Okay, which we will look in a bit. I already provide a table for that. So the general requirements for these activities to happen, the written contract should cover the outsourced activities that related in terms of the product or operation, and also any technical arrangement connected to it. So when we talk about technical arrangement, it means the uh, technical transfer. For example, the method of producing the product, okay, or it requires certain training for maybe the what do you call that, the mixing process, for example, or the formulation process. So these are within the technical arrangement that needs to be um, specified between the contract giver and also the contract acceptor. So all arrangement for the outsourced activities should be in accordance with regulation in force. So if it is in Malaysia, it has to be, within the NPRA guideline, okay, the National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Agency, and also the marketing authorization for the product concerned. That means the brand, the strength of the product. So it must be within the right specification. Now we'll look into the contract giver. The PQS of the contract giver, or the pharmaceutical quality system of the contract giver, must include the control and review of any outsourced activities. Okay, so if your company would like to maybe outsource a certain product to a different company, you have to put that into the control and review. So you cannot just leave that product to the company that you outsource to. You are still responsible for that outsourced activity. Okay, so the contract giver is ultimately responsible to ensure these processes are in place. Okay, and to assure the control of the outsourced activity. So you are still the owner. I mean, the contract giver are still the owner at the end of the day. So you must ensure the process are within the specification that have been decided. So the contract giver should be responsible for assessing the legality, suitability, and also the competence of the contract acceptor to carry out successfully the outsource activities. So basically, in this first step, normally you will have several candidates for the contract acceptor. Okay, that has the capabilities to to take the outsource activity that you want to give by assessing their maybe legal issues, suitability in terms of maybe the location, their manpower. So you have to consider that in terms of the contract giver, and then provide the contract acceptor with all the information and knowledge necessary to carry out the contracted operation correctly. That means there's some terms that we call as tech transfer, which is technical transfer. So you have to transfer all of the information and all of the knowledge. Um, let's say you have a specific product formulation that you want to outsource. So you have to make sure all of the information regarding that product has to be given to the contract acceptor, including the problems that normally arise during the manufacturing processes. Okay, that also has to be enlightened to the contract acceptor as well. And then you have to monitor and review the performance of the contract acceptor and the identification and implementation of any needed improvement. So these are normally done in a certain period for the contract giver. I mean, they should monitor and then review. Uh, these are not really done like every day, but then again, there is a acceptable time frame for the contract giver and also contract acceptor, so that their people, I mean the contract giver, can come to the plant for the contract acceptor and see how the process are being carried out for the outsource activity. And then uh, um, the last one here is uh, be responsible for reviewing and assessing the records and result related to the outsourced activity. So lastly, all of the record from the manufacturing. Normally, when you want to manufacture a batch, they will have a document called like batch manufacturing record (BMR), whereby they will list out all the details, like for example, how many raw materials are being used. In terms of specific lah, I mean the weight of each ingredient. So these are all the information that has to be kept, and for the contract giver, they also have to review to see if it is correct as intended. Okay, and the results, if the product underwent maybe quality control check, so they have to check for the result as well. Now the responsibility for the contract acceptor. So what a contract acceptor should do? The first is to carry out satisfactorily the work ordered by the contract giver, as having adequate premises, equipment, knowledge, experience, and competent personnel. So this is, I would say, the same requirement if you want to uh, uh, produce your own product. Okay, because even though you are not doing what they call outsource activity for other companies, but you still need to have adequate premises, equipment, knowledge, experience, and competent personnel. So this is important. But sometimes the contract giver might have certain extra criteria, okay, that really require. So that has to be fulfilled as well. And then you have to ensure that all the products, material, and knowledge delivered to him or her, I mean the personnel, are suitable for their intended purpose. And the third one is to, okay, the third one, you have to make sure that you does not, you mean the contract acceptor, okay, does not subcontract it to a third party. It's like um, you already got a job and then you give that job to another person. So that is unethical. Okay, so you have to do the outsource activity as you are the one who signed the contract. So no subcontract to a third party or any of the work entrusted uh, under the contract without the contracts giver prior evaluation. So if the contracts giver give the approval, then you might uh, uh, I mean subcontract it to another party, or I mean to a third party. And then number four, you cannot make unauthorized changes outside the terms of the contract, which may adversely affect the quality of the outsourced activity for the contract giver. That means you cannot just simply change the formulation. For example, you feel that the formulation might require a little bit more of the excipient, for example. Okay, you cannot do simply just, oh, I just add. Okay, or maybe you want to change the color for the tablet, for example, or the what do you call that, the score line on tablet. They have a score line. Maybe you want to remove it for some reason. Maybe the reason you say justifiable, but then again, it is not according to the contract, original contract. Okay, so no unauthorized changes can be done without prior approval from the contract giver. And number 5, understand that the outsourced activities, including the contract analysis, of the finished product, may be subject to inspection by the competent authority. So it's not that you are when you do the outsourced activities, you are free from responsibilities. Okay, you are still subject to inspection by competent authorities here. It could be from the NPRA, for example, from the KKM, for example, not just the contract giver alone. Okay, so there could be other parties that might do an inspection for the outsourced product that you have manufactured. And then the contract itself. Okay, what should be included in the contract? So it must be drawn up between the contract giver and the contract acceptor, which specifies their respective responsibilities and communication processes relating to the outsourced activities. Okay, so here, whatever things that needs to be included or that have to be done by the contract giver and acceptor needs to be listed out in detail. Okay, and then including here communication processes, that means the contract acceptor needs to update the result every weekly or maybe every once in 2 weeks, for example. So it can be decided here. And number 2, the contract should describe clearly which party to the contract has responsibility for conducting each step of the outsourced activity. So here, it's like when you have the uh, task, okay, then who are responsible for each task? Okay, so either the acceptor or the contract giver. And number 3, to outline that all records related to the outsourced activities, for example, the manufacturing process, the analytical testing, distribution records, and reference samples should be kept by or be available to the contract giver. So that means the contract giver has the authority, uh, to obtain all of the records that is related to the outsourced activities. And number 4 is to permit the contract giver to audit the outsourced activities performed by the contract acceptor or their mutually agreed subcontractors. That means an audit can be done for that activities only. That means maybe 1 or 2 personnel from the contract giver company might come to the contract sector company and see the process. Maybe they want to see the records of the manufacturing, of the testing, okay, just to make sure that everything is in accordance. All right, next on to chapter 8, which is complaints and product recall. So you see here in the picture, there is a tablet that is already cut in half, but one of the tablet here, you see there is sort of like a metal wire, okay, inside. So this is we consider this as a defect, but then again, it's a very dangerous defect, because if somebody might eat this tablet, okay, if they don't break it and eat it whole, then that person might consume this quite sharp, I think, because if you consume it already, even though the size is small, it might tear your intestine or your stomach lining, for example. I do not know, but then again, it's dangerous. So the outline for uh, chapter 8, you will see what is included in the principle, what is complaint, and how product recalls are being made. So all complaints and other information concerning potentially defective products must be carefully reviewed according to written procedures. Okay, so when you got a customer complaint for maybe one of your product, you cannot just simply ignore or maybe think, oh, this complaint is normal. we have received the same complaint for many times, so it's nothing. So you cannot do like that. Okay, it must be carefully reviewed according to the written procedures. And in order to provide for all contingencies, a system should be designed to record. That means if it comes, this is like worst case scenarios. Okay, you have to recall the product. I mean, maybe a particular batch for that product that has been sold to the market. Okay, and get it back before it can be. I mean, it is sold to the consumers. So first thing, complaints. So here you see the tablet here with various kind of uh, defects. Okay, so this can lead to complaints by the consumers. Sometimes the complaints do not come directly from the patient, but from the hospitals, entities, the pharmacies, okay, which might prescribe this to the patient. They see that, oh, this tablet easily cheap, or the tablets can the color is different from usual. So the complaints might not come directly from the patient, because patient they just normally they just eat whatever drugs that is prescribed to them. Okay, unless the patient is also a pharmacist or doctors, then they might know something is different about the drugs or the medicine. So a person should be designated responsible for handling the complaints and deciding the measures to be taken, together with sufficient supporting staff to assist him. Um, Written procedures describing the action to be taken, including the need to consider a recall in the case of a complaint concerning a possible product defect. That means when uh, in a company, okay, in a manufacturing company, you must have at least a person that responsible to receive this complaint, and then this person also must decide on what to do with the complaint. Okay, either to investigate, to find out what is the problem, and then try to find maybe solution. Okay, they are like a person who is a bridge between the customer and also the employee, or I mean the staff that are actually responsible to manufacture them. I mean the production lah, normally the production department. So complaints on product defect are normally recorded with all original details, and it will be thoroughly investigated. The head of department for quality control must be involved in the problem study. So they cannot just leave it to their junior staff to do the job, to investigate. So the head of the department for the quality control must be involved as well. The product defect is discovered or suspected in a batch. What you can do is you might consider to check other batches as well in order to determine whether they are also affected. So if you receive a complaint and that complaint uh, you suspect it could be coming from one batch, so what you can do, you might want to consider to check other batches as well. Okay, to determine whether these other batches are safe or they also are affected. Okay, because when you produce the product, okay, the finished product, they are normally done in batch. Okay, they are not because in one batch maybe they can get like 1 million tablet, for example. So one batch 1 million. So if you need to market maybe 10 million tablets, for example, then you have to do 10 batches, 10 different batches. So the defect or the problems for the complaint or for your product might come from one of the batches only. But to be safe, you have to maybe want to consider to check all of the other batches, so that to make sure that the other batches are not affected. So all the decisions and measures taken as a result of complaint should be recorded and reference to the corresponding batch record. And the complaints record must be reviewed regularly for any indication of specific or recurring problems requiring attention, and also possibly the recall of marketed products. So if you already have a history of product complaint, the complaints, I mean the problems that arise to the complaint has to be reviewed regularly. That means you have to, I mean the person in charge, especially in the production or maybe in the packaging, have to make sure that they are aware of what problem arise that leads to the customer complaint, just to avoid the problems from recurring again. And then special attention also should be given to establishing whether a complaint was caused by counterfeiting. The competent authorities should be informed if a manufacturer is considering action following possibly faulty manufacture, product deterioration, detection of counterfeiting, or any other serious quality problems with a product. So here, if you feel that the complaint and you have found out that the complaints are true, and uh, the quality of the product that are being manufactured are seriously affected in terms of the quality, you might want to include competent authorities. Okay, that means in pharmaceutical industry, normally it is MPRA lah. You may want to include them in this complaint of your product, because if, for example, the effect are quite severe, you might have to do product recalls. Okay, product recalls is when a company have to call back all of the specific batches for certain product from market. That means you cannot sell it anymore. Like I think 5 years or 6 years back, the company of Royce Pharma in Nilai, I think it was in the newspaper, they have to recall back the paracetamol oral suspension for children. So they have to recall all of that. The specific of the problem are not mentioned, but then again, it was in the news that they have to recall all of the batches for the PCM suspension. So if a product recalls happen, a person should be designated again. The person can be the same one as the person who received the complaint, or it could be another person. So this person have the responsibility to execute and coordinate for recalls or product recalls, and they should be supported by sufficient staff. So it's not a one-man job lah. You normally have a whole department for you. And this responsible person should normally be independent of the sales and marketing organization. So it cannot be the same person from sales and marketing, because sales and marketing, what they only care is about making profit. Okay, but when you did the product recall, this will cause um, uh, uh, loss. Okay? I mean a loss for the company. So it is not a very good thing. So at best, it is best to try to avoid the product recalls. But if worst case scenarios happen, then that person must have sufficient support staff to execute and also to coordinate the product recalls. And there should be established written procedures and regularly checked and updated when necessary. That means what should be done. What should be done when you need to have a product recalls. That means you have to check on all of the distributors for your product, for example, and then the distributors need to maybe contact customers that already buy them or purchase your product. So there should be a written procedures on the exact way on how to handle this product recalls. So recall operation should be capable of being initiated promptly and at any time, and all competent authorities of all countries to which products may have been distributed should be informed promptly if products are intended to be recalled because they are or are suspected of being defective. So here, if the product are only sold in Malaysia, then you only have to worry about MPRA lah. But if let's say you are selling this to the United States, for example, USA, then you need to call the authorities, which is the FDA, the Food and Drug Agency, and each country will have their own competent authorities on this area. So the distribution records should be readily available to the person that is responsible for the product recalls. So, and it should contain sufficient information on wholesalers and directly supplied customers. Okay, that includes their address, phone numbers, and the amount of products that have been purchased by them. So recall products are then identified and must be stored separately in secure area while awaiting a decision on their fate. That means whether it needs to be destroyed, okay, or maybe the company wants to test it again or do an analysis, in-depth analysis for the recall product. And then the progress of the recall process should be recorded and a final report issued, including a reconciliation between the delivered and recovered quantities of the products. Okay, and then the effectiveness of the arrangement for recalls should be evaluated regularly. So here are the flow chart, okay, for complaints and product recalls. It's actually the whole slide before, but being compressed in this one slide lah. So complaint received, you investigate the cause. Is it from counterfeiting, faulty manufacturing, quality program, or product deterioration? So this, if you need to do recall, then you go to the right side. But if what do you call that? The problems are proved to be caused by different reason. For example, storage conditions not followed, then you will provide with an alternative to solve that problem, and you can close the case for that complaint. Okay. In Malaysia, any product complaint will go through MPRA before received by the manufacturer. That means the manufacturing company does not receive complaint directly. Everything, if let's say a distributor or the patient, for example, if they want to complain, it has to be through MPRA first, okay, not directly to the company. Okay, chapter 9, which is on self inspection. So as the name title means self-inspection, that means the inspection are done by your own self. So your own self means the company itself. So self-inspection should be conducted in order to monitor the implementation and compliance with GMP principles and to propose necessary corrective measures. So this can also sometimes, I would say, similar to an internal audit. That means before an external auditor, maybe like you have the contract, or I mean the outsource activity, the contract giver wants to come and audit the process for the contract accepted. So before the contract giver personnel come and do the audit, okay, the contract acceptor might do an self-inspection, which we can also call as an internal audit, okay, just to monitor the implementation and the compliance with GMP principle, and also to see if there is necessary corrective measures needed. So these are the matters that should be examined during the intervals. Personal matters, the premises, equipment, equipment is all of the equipment from the manufacturing side and up to the analytical lab, for example, the QC lab, documentation, production, quality control, product distribution, and the arrangement for dealing with complaints and also product recalls. So self-inspection must be conducted in an independent and also detailed way by designated competent person from the company. So this competent person is not just randomly selected. They are normally a person who have what do you call that, obtained trainings, how to be an auditor, and what to check and what to expect during the internal inspection itself or the audit itself. Okay, it's not just like today you are selected, okay, randomly from one department. No, normally the competent person are trained first before they are asked to do an inspection. So all self-inspection should be recorded. Report should contain the observation made during the inspection, proposal for corrective measures, and statements on the actions subsequently taken. All right, so that is the content for subunit 1, subunit 1H, I think. So any question regarding this part over here?